Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipson. Today's guest is Geoff Wilson. He has over 15 years of experience from the sports management industry. He started his sports management career as head of marketing and communication at the Irish Football Association. Now he runs his own consultancy firm, where he mainly consults on marketing, strategy, and fan engagement. His work has taken him to 89 countries, and he has worked with organizations such as FIFA, UEFA, FIBA, and the Asian Football Confederation. So, Geoff Wilson, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you so much for having us along. So hopefully we'll have a very interesting debate over the next 40-45 minutes.
I'm sure we will. So you are the owner of Geoff Wilson Consultancy. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do with this consultancy?
Yeah, so my sort of main focus is in the area of sports consultancy, obviously. But for Geoff Wilson Consultancy, I started it in 2013. But it really didn't, in essence, start there. It started actually before that. It started whenever I was finished as a student in university. That's actually critically important for people to know. I think it's really important to have your education, to finish your education and to have a good education as a good base. So after my education, I went and worked for an organisation called British Telecom. So British Telecom is a local telecommunications organisation here in the UK and Northern Ireland. And in there, I really learnt my trade in terms of marketing. So what do I mean by that? So different and variety of areas of marketing. So whether that was research or whether that was competitive intelligence or whether that was campaigns. And what was important is being able to get a holistic view of marketing. So many people talk about specialising. So, for example, being a specialist in social media, I actually think it's better to go the other way, to be a generalist and have an overview of a whole wide range of areas within your set skill set or your industry or area. But during that time, then a role came up at the Irish Football Association, which is the governing body for football here in Northern Ireland. And to be honest with you, I never thought of getting into sport. And that's why I started initially with the Geoff Wilson Consultancy at the start, because I never thought I would get into sport, if I'm being honest with you, and yet I'm a sports guy. But I applied for the job. I always said there was nobody else in for it, hence why I got the job. And I was there for 10 years, doing a range of areas within the Irish Football Association, and that just opened my mind to sport, sports management, sports business, sports marketing. And then once I finished there, then I set up Geoff Wilson Consultancy, and that's now the loop completed, where I basically am at present working with different clients globally in sport. Now, what do I do? So under Geoff Wilson Consultancy, I focus in on strategic planning, on governance, on commercial, communications, fan engagement, and capacity building programs for sports organisations. So I work with some of the biggest sports in the world, and most would be in, and I can start to see now more and more and more coming into that strategic planning, governance, and the broader marketing areas. So that's a little bit about me and a little bit about my journey into sport.
As you said, you started your career at British Telecom and got into sports management and the Irish Football Federation after that. Then in 2008, you started working for UEFA. What were you doing there, and how did you get in contact with UEFA?
Yeah, great question. So what happens is within UEFA, they're a member organisation, and the Irish Football Association was one of those members of UEFA. So because of that, what UEFA were doing is a knowledge sharing program, and that knowledge sharing program was bringing different federations together, sharing and exchanging knowledge within each other, as well as experts that were coming in to talk about everything from broadcast to marketing to merchandising to branding to a whole range of, let's say, business areas. And while I was at the Irish Football Association, they really liked our story. In essence, the story at the Irish FA is we doubled turnover in 5 years. and we won awards in marketing with little to no budget. And because there was little to no budget, they really liked how we did things. So we did some consultancy with UEFA on exchanging our learnings for other member federations. But I would stress it wasn't just all about us, because I was learning from other people as well. So yeah, that's in essence what we were doing in those early days.
And today with your consultancy, you are working with many different organizations such as FIFA, FIBA, and the Asian Football Confederation, among others. How does it differ in the way that you consult these different leagues, since they are related to different sports? Or is it the same across the board?
Yeah, most would be in the area of strategy, governance, and marketing. And then the last bit, capacity building programs. So what we would do is we would create a program alongside the federation. And then what we would do is roll that out within their members. So if it's a strategy, it's identifying a vision, a mission, goals, objectives, action plans, budget, monitoring, etc. And we bring them through that process. If it's governance, we're looking first of all at the role of the assembly, the board, then the organisation, policies and procedures. I'm really looking deep into that. If it's on marketing, then it'll most likely be in commercial. So looking at sponsorship and putting a sponsorship program together, or it could be on digital, putting a digital program together, or it could be in capacity building. So taking the leaders of a global federation and how do we increase their knowledge in an area that allows them to effectively manage the organisation better. So it's very wide and ranging within all of those organisations, but at the same time, it probably gets narrowed down to about 5 or 6 broad areas. And again, that gets back to my point earlier, widen out your skill sets to those that are listening. Don't narrow them.
Yeah, definitely. So does it differ in the way that you consult if you're consulting with a football league or with a basketball league or an esports league? Or is it the same concept that you apply to these different sports?
The same principles are there. So if it's a strategy, it's all about vision, mission, goals, objectives, and there's a set process. Sometimes the process may change, but the principles are always the same. So whether your strategy in a corporate organisation, it should be the same than if you're in a sporting organisation. The same with the likes of governance. Where it changes is different. There's different makeups. Some people might have an executive committee of a small number of people. Some might have a large board. So there's different areas within there is where I would see some differences at times. But in general, it should always be the same principles in those areas. Let me give you another example. If you talk about sports commercial, it will always be ticketing, broadcast, sponsorship, food and beverage, advertising. It'll always be those type of areas. Where is different will be from one sport to another. Maybe one sport isn't big on merchandising, but they're huge on, for example, food and beverage. So there's different things that you can just take, but the principles are always the same.
Now during the pandemic, how has this affected your job? And in terms of sports marketing, what changes have you seen since most leagues and teams are working with reduced income from ticketing, etc.?
Yeah, another great question. You're really on fire with these questions. I think what COVID has done is a couple of things. I think on a negative side, it has created, most likely for most leagues, reduced ticketing income. So people can't go to the stadium. It's had a strain on broadcast revenues because a percentage, of games were not live, or like the NBA and the Premier League, they had to, the return to play was put in place. So there's issues around reduced broadcast. There's issues around reduced ticketing. Then that means there's most likely a lot of organisations are probably going to really struggle from a financial point of view. So I think those are the negative bits, let alone just what the virus does itself. I think on the positive side, what I'm seeing in sports organisations is they're now reaching back into the community. So they're doing community type programs, meals for those that are vulnerable, calling people that are vulnerable, and that has got to be good for our society. And that, in essence, is what sport probably was years ago, but we've maybe had a bit of a slight shift between the community and the club. Now we're starting to see that come back again. And what I really hope is that continues and that, strengthens. I think what we're seeing is the athletes themselves are becoming even more content creators. So people are following them as influencers. And I think that is really a big positive that's come out. And I think what's going to be an interesting area, if somebody gets a transfer from one football club to the other, do they start to bring in the brand of the player as well? Because of their, reach, will that add more value to the transfer fee? But I think, those have been, I think, interesting areas. And I think what's happened, it's forced technology onto us, and what I mean by that, I'm talking digital in general. The NBA have got 300 plus people on MS Teams watching the games on a video wall. We've had players call fans on Zoom. We've had numerous podcasts, numerous meetings, numerous conversations with people on Zoom. So I think it's forced us to use the technology, and that has benefited a lot of people. So when we talk about Geoff Wilson Consultancy, I found that, I've been to 89 countries doing what I do, which is a lot. And I think without that travel, I've now, been able to do everything on Zoom from, my office here. So it's reduced costs of travel. I think the way for me, the impact has been very clearly that you still can do it over Zoom. It just is a little bit different, and it takes the processes a bit longer. And I think I've started to create a number of e-learning courses, and those e-learning courses is becoming a new way of people to educate themselves. So there's a whole range of ways, but for me personally, it's all about a screen now, and it's all about digital and how I do my job.
You mentioned e-courses. Is that what you are doing at the Barca Innovation Hub?
Yes, it is indeed. Barcelona has got an amazing global brand and global reach, and they have created the Barca Innovation Hub. And within that, they have an e-learning program. And in essence, they're taking the content and the knowledge from a range of people within the industry and within their organization, their club. They're in essence commercializing that income, that knowledge. So how are they doing that? Basically, you're recording, you're providing content templates, and then on the back of that, then they put it in an e-learning platform, and then they sell it. And that e-learning platform or course has a certificate, and that certificate then is an official certificate for a range of different sports, both on the field and off the field courses. So they approached me and asked me to create a digital marketing in sport course. I created that course, which went live in March of this year. And I'm really pleased to say the amount of people who has purchased the course, but also the feedback has been absolutely amazing. And some people would say to me, they contact me, what's on the course? And in essence, what I break it down into research and conducting a digital audit. Then I look at creating a digital plan. Then I look at areas such as digital fan engagement. I look at digital revenue. I look at digital research. I look at digital esports and gaming. I look at digital communications, digital branding, and a range of other areas like data and CRM. And all of these subjects, then you can do distance learning on your own, and you get an official certificate. So it's ideal for those who are especially looking to start out in sport or looking to get a greater understanding of the digital side in sport.
And how long is this course?
It's a 3-month course, and at the end of the day, it's down to you in terms of how quick you want to do it or how slow that you want to do it. But the feedback that we have got from it has just been tremendous. And you know that when other people are sharing it on their social media, that they've got the certificate and that they're pleased. So for me personally, I am really, really delighted, thank those ones who have actually taken the course. For me, the most important bit without doubt that people are learning, and that knowledge that maybe I've built up through 89 countries, what I'm trying to do is put that knowledge into e-learning courses so that people can learn and we'll learn together, because I'll still learn off lots of people as well. Absolutely.
Because you're also a professor at Queen's University.
Yeah, so I've been there for now maybe 8 years, and what I do at Queen's University. So Queen's University is one of the major universities in the island of Ireland and in the UK, and I teach on the Masters in Marketing course. And again, I teach digital marketing on that course. So again, we look at various areas of digital marketing, and that is good because it allows me and helps me to keep sharp. What's the latest research? What's the latest models? But also, you're able to give back in terms of your knowledge. But with the students, you're able to see what is it that interests them from the digital. What are they doing? So it's a two-way process. So it starts again, and it's basically for one semester over 10 weeks. And again, people then get a master's from the university. So it's great. What is amazing, and this has happened whenever your students come up to you and say that was one of the best courses that we did, and I've now got a full-time job. I don't even want them to say anything else. When they say to me they've just got a full-time job, my job is done. And I just love to see people, getting on in their careers, and that gives me a kick.
I think it's great that you have gone into teaching so that you, with all your experience from 89 countries, can give back to the next generation of sports managers.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And again, to those listening, there is a genuine, I want to give back. I mean, and the best way to do that, because you can't do it one-to-one, it's just too many people. If you did it on an e-learning, or you did it within an absolute, like a master's course, that's a way that you can do that. So, I want to see the young up and coming sports management, sports business students succeeding. My time is probably almost been and gone, maybe. So I want to see those young ones taking on that mantle.
So what would be your advice for someone who wants to take the sports management career path?
Well, I think if they're wanting to get into sports management, sports business, sports marketing, number one, I would say go and volunteer right now when you're at university and when you leave and during the summer. But don't just volunteer doing something that's not related to your university degree. Go and do something that you want to try and figure out that's related to your degree, to figure out which area you really enjoy. So, for example, you might be doing a marketing degree and communications. So if it's a marketing and communications degree, go and ask your local football club, basketball club, MMA club, whatever it is, or more importantly, the league or federation, and say to them, can I work in your marketing department? Can I work in sponsorship? Can I work in the digital area? Can I work in media? In a range of areas, so that you get an understanding what it's like to work in a life environment. Plus, you can then feel that's the one I really like. So go and do your volunteering. The reason why I say volunteering is because you get a feel for, as I've said before, on the area that you really want to, get a job in. So, for example, it could be media. When you start out, think you might want to be selling in commercial sponsorship, and you might think you've got a knack in the likes of media. So I would go and do that. And then when you're in the job at media, then I would then try and widen out what I was talking about earlier. So maybe within media, you do some digital. Then maybe you work with the commercial department. Then you look at branding. So you're widening out your knowledge and your skills. So volunteer. And that's the second bit with volunteering is it's great on your CV. You have got to build your CV. The bottom line is there is hundreds of other people that are doing this. And if you're not increasing your CV, you're just not going to be at the game when it comes to an interview. So volunteering is number one. Number two, network. Go and talk to people and build up your network. You've got to reach out to people. You've got to chat to people. You've got to understand what's happening in the industry, some movers and shakers. Network, network, network. Number three, go and do some blogs. If you're into fan engagement, if you're into digital, if you're into sports technology, go and write about it. But put down maybe 5 or 6 topics and do one a month. And get your name out there, do a lot of research, and then write your blog. And I think the the fourth area is mentoring. Go and get a mentor. Somebody who can take you through the choppy waters of business in a sports organisation. And again, that's maybe sometimes can be really difficult to do, but a good mentor is worth their weight in gold. So for me, it's about networking, volunteering, doing the blogs, and that blogs is good because you're learning, keeping learning, and the mentoring would be the key things that I would say for somebody who's starting out in sport.
You have said on other occasions that you are just a regular guy, and if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Absolutely, and I honestly mean that. There is nothing special about Geoff Wilson. I'm a regular guy, and genuinely, if I can do it, somebody else can do it. And what you need is hard work. You need to graft, hard work. Sometimes you've got to be at the right place at the right time, but you've got to have a relentless focus on getting to where you want to get to. But if I can do it, anybody else can do it.
Did you have a mentor in the beginning of your career or someone that you looked up to?
Yeah, there was a number of people. One at British Telecom who was my manager. He was also my mentor. What an individual. Really focused and wanted to see me develop when I was younger and helped me just to steer me in the right ways and the right path. What an impact he has made. And then at the Irish FA, an older individual who had been there and done it, and the two of us started together. But the way that he again looked after me and worked with me to really make an impact at the Irish Football Association again was so vital to me at those times.
I want to bounce back a little bit to sports marketing. You are very pro technology. And I feel like with all the negative side effects of Corona, maybe, and you mentioned other positive aspects before, but maybe the importance of technology has become more clear with this, that we can make Teams meetings and the importance of social media marketing and so on.
Yeah, I mean, technology is definitely going to be here to stay. And if we take the Gen Zs, that Generation Z, as they are starting to grow up, they know nothing but technology. They were almost born with a phone in their hand. So a life without technology is just not there. And there's a different way that they consume content, a different way that they want content to delivered. And that's what sport has got to keep ahead of. So for me, I think there's about 3 or 4 broad areas that technology and sport. So number one is stadium and admin. So that stadium's all about cashless stadiums, cashless payments. That's all about being able to, when you're in the stadium, LED signage and be able to personalize certain signage. And then within the stadium, I'm putting administration. So in there, I'm talking about a CRM, single view of the customer, personalization, all of that, as well as business transformation or digital transformation, using digital transform certain process within admin that helps to improve a process's time. So there's that one area, and technology is making an impact. Area 2 is on player performance. So GPS tracking, all of those sorts of type of data that's created on the back of players, and to make them increase by 1% or 2%. And I think there's a huge growth in that area. And I think the third is in fan engagement. So in terms of fan engagement, whether that is fantasy gaming on digital, whether that is how you view content as a watch party, watching your favorite sport, whether that is OTT, you name it, technology, AR, VR, artificial intelligence, all of these technologies are now coming to play, especially in the likes of fan engagement. But it does touch into the other areas as well. And that's helping people to prepare both on the field and off the field.
You have developed your own fan engagement model, correct?
That's right.
Could you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, so through the 89 different countries that I've been to, myself and a colleague, David Fowler, we created a fan engagement model. And that fan engagement model talks about when most people engage their fans, they engage them at the stadium on game day. So if you can think a big box split into 4 quadrants. So the quadrant on the bottom left-hand corner, on match day at the venue. And what our model says, but what about on match day and you're not at the venue? What about non-match day, but you're at the stadium? And what about non-match day and you're not at the stadium? So what we are saying is there's 4 quadrants that you need to have fan engagement programs around. So let me give you one quick example. Match day at the stadium, fantastic fan zone, fantastic food and beverage. Match day not at the stadium, digital content, OTT streaming platforms, etc., etc. Non-match day, but at the venue, that could be using AR or VR for a museum tour or for a stadium tour. And if you take non-match day, but not at the stadium, that's about going out to the community. Maybe it's organising 12-week, 14-week, 20-week coaching programs with community and within schools. Or maybe it's doing a manager or player question and answer at a local facility and inviting fans to that event. So what I'm saying is you need to create fan engagement ideas in these 4 quadrants. It can't just be at match day at the venue. And then the second model that I've created along with a good friend Bass is all about growing attendance. And that model, it all talks about how do you grow attendance. And what we've discussed is a number of building blocks to create that and help you to grow attendance. Now, in fairness, it was post-COVID-19, but the same thing applies now. And it's all about understanding a clear vision, a mission, having clear heritage or history. It talks about having clear goals. It talks about having a great leadership who's focused in on it. It talks about having research. It talks about having great customer service. It talks about your proactive and reactive marketing campaigns. It talks about the fan engagement. It talks about tribes. And this model in general talks about how you grow attendance at games. So what we've tried to do with these 2 models is to get it out into the market, to get people to discuss it so they can apply certain bits to their own situation.
If we go back to the first model and the quadrant game day not at the stadium, which is very relevant now during the pandemic, how do you think organizations have succeeded with this quadrant?
Well, I think what has happened is we're starting to see a lot more, like, for example, you've got Pepsi, who you now get delivered your corporate hospitality to your organization. So what I'm saying is you're getting a lot of innovation. You're getting people with the likes of Deliveroo or Just Eat through the apps, delivering your food and your beverage ready to live stream your game. So these type of technologies are now starting to come together where when you're not at the venue, then you're starting and able to understand various bits around the club. And that could be before game day. It could be on game day. And that could also be player interviews, player insights. It could be data that's happening during the game through somebody like a Sport Radar and through your OTT live stream. You could be literally looking at the data of how a player has run, the number of shoots, the number of their succession passes, all of that data. Or it could be creating a watch party yourself with your friends and having that interaction. So I think the pandemic has drove us to be innovative and creative. I still would have to say I would love that the pandemic never happened. That's for sure. But it's driving us to change our behaviours, our thinking, and to be innovative. That probably if there was no pandemic, it would have took another X number of years for these sorts of things. In other words, it's accelerated these type of new behaviours, new culture, a new way of doing digital.
Definitely. One of the first sports that came back after sports were cancelled was mixed martial arts, and in particular the UFC. They became sort of a role model for other sports on how to come back. Why do you think that they were so successful?
Yeah, so MMA in essence is split into 2 broad areas. So you've got UFC, which is the professional fighters, and then you've got IMAF, which is in essence the amateur game. And those two organisations are doing amazing work. And the growth of MMA is getting bigger. I think now there's over 70 federations in IMAF. IMAF itself is getting professional. It's getting more awareness. So I think what's going to probably happen with the likes of MMA, they're again being proactive in changing how the fan consumes their content, where, when, how, and to make sure that engagement is fantastic. So, for example, IMAF have signed up with Sport Radar to do an OTT of their championships. So that's just a small example, being able to then use and collect a lot of data feeds on the back of their championships that they live stream. So I think MMA is one of those sports, like esports, where you're starting to see a lot of people getting very interested and in following them. And I think those sports are ones that will be very interesting to see over the next couple of years. But knowing the guys at the likes of IMAF, they're highly professional, highly well organised, and doing a great job.
Sports for the power of good. What is it and why is it important?
So if you took 20 people and you asked them which ones are in sport, in certain countries, like for example the UK and Ireland, I guarantee the majority of them will say they're into some sort of sport. Whether that's horse racing, whether that is football. In other words, many people are sports nation. And because they're a sporting nation, that means you can do some very interesting things. What is it you can do? So the power of sport that people will always think about is keeping healthy. There's also the working with other people and being part of a team and that teamwork and that community, because as individuals, that's what we like to be. Sport can be used to tackle issues like crime, but it also can be used to promote good things like nutrition. Let me give you an example. In the Republic of Ireland, they have partnered with the Garda Síochána, the police, and they have created a program called Midnight Soccer. And the idea is to go into areas where there's high crime, put football in there, and on the back of that midnight soccer playing football is that in those areas of high crime, can people play football and get that, the health, the fitness, you name it, but can it affect the crime rate? And in many areas, they've actually identified through research that crime has come down. So there's a very simple idea. Let me talk about the Ulster Grand Prix. The Ulster Grand Prix is the world's fastest road race, and it's a motorbike event. And with the UGP, they were asked by the Department of Justice to see if they could work alongside them to tackle antisocial behaviour on scramblers, on dirt bikes. Now, these scramblers and dirt bikes were doing maybe antisocial behaviour and maybe wanting to get the police to chase them because that's part of the fun. But what we were doing then, we came in alongside and said, okay, you're into motorbikes, so are we. So we took them for a 12-week period and we trained them on how to strip an engine, how to change oil, how to change a tyre, how to ride a bike properly. And not only that, we give them training on how to be a marshal, first aid training. And the difference that we started to see, because you were telling them indirectly other, good, positive behaviours. And what we were finding is that the boys and the girls were then really warming to this because it wasn't seen as education, but it was the power of sport that helped to change their behaviours. Some of those kids have now got jobs. So instead of going this way in life, that maybe could have ended somewhere badly, they now went this way and they now have a job. And I've got so many other examples where, the health people have an eat well plate, and the eat well plate is broken down to how much you should eat on protein, carbs, etc. every day. That's a good message. But if I say to a young kid, there's the eat well plate, crack on, away you go, they'd probably look at you and go, what? But when you do that with the power of the sport that they love, i.e., this is what Messi eats before a game, this is what Messi eats after a game, this is what Messi eats when he's not playing, and here's the effect that it has on them, that becomes powerful. And that is the power of sport.
As you said, you have been to 89 countries, you have worked with major sports organizations, you have been teaching and much more. Has there been any bumps on the road? And if so, how did you overcome these?
Yeah, loads of bumps on the road. And I think it's have to have that sort of can-do attitude. When I started the Irish Football Association, maybe the brand was not seen as representative of the full side of the community. And we had zero money. And what we ended up doing is we created, along with the whole staff at the Irish Football Association, a Football for All programme that was run by our community relations department. And we changed what people thought of the Irish Football Association over time. But we did a whole range of things, a whole range of programmes that was really meaningful, that made a big change. And that took a little bit of time. But there are always things that you're going to maybe struggle with. But what you've got to have is that can-do attitude. And if there's somewhere where you're not sure of, go and do research. Go and chat to some people who have done it. But chat to maybe other stakeholders to see what are they saying. And then maybe the other side of it all would be to go and read about it. So the area of governance is an area that I didn't do up until the last 5 years. But I knew I needed to get onto a board, to get expert time within a board. So I joined 2 boards, Netball Northern Ireland, a sports board as chair, and Tourism Northern Ireland, where we used sport to drive tourism and other tourism-related activities. But being on those 2 boards gave me an understanding of how a board works, so that whenever I talk to people over the last 5 years, I'm talking from a position of confidence on how a board works from a governance point of view and what things need to go on within that board environment. So if there are things you're being asked to do, think about those things that I've talked about. Go get the experience in it or talk to people who are doing it. Always good to start with research if you're struggling with something.
That's indeed very interesting. And I think that sports tourism can be one episode by itself.
Absolutely. And a very, very interesting, because not only does that tourism provide a feel-good factor, it's the economic return in your country as well.
Yeah. Is there something that I haven't asked you that you would like to mention?
I think that the only other thing that I would say to people listening in, and again, I can just talk about from my point of view, just similar, but to get experiences on a board, I'm still learning. But one of the things that I did that I felt was really important is I did a UEFA A license in the coaching. So I did my level 1, my C, my B, and now I'm an A license coach. Now, I don't want that to come across, oh, look at me, because I'm not saying that. But what I am saying, if I'm doing consultancy and if it's in football, and if I'm away with different global partners, I add so much to the conversation whenever I'm talking about on-field and off-field. So if you're a consultant and you only talk about off-field because that's your area, that's fine, that's good. But you bring so much more when you can talk about on-field because you've got a coaching badge and it becomes more holistic, more rounded. And when you're more holistic, more rounded, then that means you deliver more. Then you're always pushing yourself, and by that pushing yourself, you do a job to a set standard, and people remember that standard, and that then brings referrals. So it's all about widening out your skill sets that are complementary to your core bit of business.
Speaking of widening your skill sets, do you read a lot?
Yes, I do, and most of it would be, just because of time, would be in the area of sports marketing, sports business. So I would read lots of articles. These are 2-minute, 3-minute articles that I would read in a whole range of sports publications. And that's good for me because I get to keep ahead of the game on what's happening. So the answer is yes, and I would suggest other people should read a lot, both within and without, sport, because it's good to rest the mind and to think about other things.
And finally, if you could choose my next guest on the podcast, who would you recommend?
Well, I think it would be interesting to have somebody on the likes of the CEO of MyCuju. So MyCuju is an online OTT platform, and they are heavily involved in like the likes of the Brazil Football Federation and a whole range of other people. And the reason why I say that is really about where's this whole area of OTT going within the context of pre and post COVID-19. So that whole area of OTT and broadcast and wider broadcast would be a very, very interesting interview to have. Somewhere like MyCuju or D-Zone, something like that would be, I think, a very interesting conversation.
Definitely. Thank you so much for being on the Sports Management Podcast and sharing all of your information with us.
Marcus, you're very welcome. Thank you for the time. And, I think it's great that you're doing these podcasts, so keep up the good work.
Thanks so much. Thank you for listening to Sports Management Podcast. Do you have thoughts or ideas about this podcast, or do you know someone that I should interview next? Please reach out to me on sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or visit my website sportsmanagementpodcast.com. If you prefer social media, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at sportsmpodcast.